Information overload, and I mean literally. We've had tons of information about Phase 2. In fact, it's pretty much everything that you need to know. We're going to look at Gnomeregan and how it's going to launch, and some of the items as well that come with it. New mounts, the new PvP event where you can actually kill your own guildies for rewards. Now, I quite like that. New profession recipes where Blizzard have actually gone above and beyond now, because they've even made alchemy and enchanting particularly powerful in terms of personal gain. A look at a couple of runes for each class, and some of them are absolutely nuts. GDKPs officially banned on Season of Discovery realms when Phase 2 launches. Now that's a big one. PvP queuing changes, so this is to alleviate so many issues that come around pre-mades versus solo queuing, and honestly just so much more. So let's just dive straight in because there's a lot to get through. Now firstly, I'll put a link to this whole post, which is actually on the official World of Warcraft website. There's also a video in there as well. Now it's a 30-odd minute video. I've watched the video in full, so I've took any of the information that's missing from the post that was actually present in the video, and we're going to put it all in one place. So hopefully you only need to watch this and nothing else. I don't mean ever. I mean, that would be boring. So first of all, Gnomeregan has been confirmed, but we already knew this anyway, but it's been confirmed as a 10-man raid. It's also got 6 bosses in, so they've actually added an extra boss, which we've never seen before. Gnomeregan is going to have more epics available than BFD. In fact, they said 3 times as many epics in Gnomeregan than there was in BFD. There's a new profession quest chain that's going to allow you to find materials and craft new powerful items. And they did tease some of the actual boss abilities as well. But what's most important is what they're actually doing with launch. So as a compromise for both leading edge players and more casual players, the raid dungeon will become available with the launch of Season of Discovery Phase 2, but there will be 2 lockouts on the normal weekly lockout timer. So what this basically means is, day 1, yes, Gnomeregan's going to be available, but it's going to be on a 7-day lockout timer, and that's for 2 resets. So the most you might miss is 1 reset if you was particularly slow leveling, maybe due to work or real life commitments. So it's a lot better than potentially missing 2 or 3 lockouts if it was on a 3-day lockout. So this means that the first of these raid resets will occur on February the 13th, and the second will occur on February 20th. Their reasoning behind this is because this will allow all levels of players to not feel like they're missing out, but you're going to get the, obviously, super hardcore people want to get in probably day 1. And by doing it this way, no one really should be missing out. So they've teased some of the changes to the bosses, where they've said Grubbis has new radiation vents that may come into play in this encounter. So what that basically means is they're definitely going to come into play in this encounter. Crowd Pummeler 960. So this boss has moved to a new part of the dungeon where the encounter will occur on a raised platform before a crowd. Now this picture's actually been shown here, and what's interesting is what Tim Jones said in the video. So he teased at the fact that what could a big robot do that likes to punch you in the face on top of a platform above a deadly pit of death or something like that, he said. So what they've basically teased at is the fact that likely on this boss, you're not going to want to get punched off of the platform down below. The final boss being Thermoplug looks really cool as well now because he's got new mechanical suits as part of his arsenal. So my guess would be there's going to be a different suit that he wears for each different phase that has got different mechanics. There is again a screenshot here where you can actually see some of these new suits in the background. What they've done loot-wise is actually really cool. The first one I've got to talk about is the automatic crowd pummeler. So if you don't know, feral druids will be delighted at this because in Classic, ordinarily, feral druids would be running Gnomeregan back to back to back to back until they're locked out to try and get as many manual crowd pummelers as possible because they only had 3 charges. Don't know why I put one finger up when I'm trying to say there's 3. Well, instead now, it's on a 3-minute cooldown, which is absolutely fine. It does now give feral attack power, so one of my concerns in a recent video was the fact that the version of the automatic crowd pummeler that's in-game didn't have feral attack power on, which meant likely Fist of the Wild from Black Fathom Deeps would still be better. Well, that's not going to be the case. It's got feral attack power on and a huge amount of strength, 22 strength. You got Bonk's Maestro Handguard, so you can actually get some weapon skill, so these could be compared to something like Edge Masters. Domesticated Attack Chicken seems really cool, so releasing the Domesticated Attack Chicken that'll fight for you for 1.5 minutes or until defeated. Now, this is probably here because you can't actually get Gnomish Engineering yet, which we'll get to that later on. But ordinarily, this type of chicken would actually give a haste buff, and that would be to the party, but probably excluded from Warcraft logs. But you can see there's a lot of really cool items on here. I particularly like the fact that we're getting a nice tanking trinket where it increases your chance to dodge by 1%, but it's got a really juicy use effect where it increases your armor by 1,000 but your movement speed is reduced by 60%. It's got a long cooldown, being 30 minutes, but I don't know, maybe you use it for one particular pull as part of a speed run or something, I don't know. They've also added some nice fun items, so you can now turn yourself into a trog. Obviously, we've got no idea where these come from yet, but likely certain bosses will drop them. Yeah, so like an orb of deception where you can turn yourself into a trog. It's got a random world warper where the use effect says, where could this device possibly take you? Oh well, who cares? This could be interesting once we find out what locations it actually can take you to. And then some radiant ray reflectors, so the word deal with it is etched into the side. Just a cool cosmetic item. Now, what they've done with item sets, I absolutely love, because it's been really frustrating in Black Fathom Deeps for me, and I'd guess probably for many of you, that you just keep seeing the same, I don't know, Mal boots or chest, the same items dropping constantly and you still haven't got the ones you want. But I've gone down the token route for the new set items that you get, and we can actually get a sneaky little preview of what the set bonuses are going to be as well. But like you can see, the power depleted boots here, these would be able to be handed into a vendor by anybody, so priests, warlock, rogues, whatever, it doesn't matter. If these drop, everybody in your raid that hasn't got boots would be able to roll on these, and if you win the power depleted boots, you can then hand them in for the specific set that you want. This is going to make it a lot less frustrating, but at the same time, there'll be a lot of people rolling on these first tokens, isn't there? But when we look at the sets that we can see here, so hazard leg plates, so these are your plate legs where they increase defense by 7 with a 2 set, 16 attack power as well with the 2 set, and then the 3 set improves your chance to hit with spells and melee and ranged attacks by 1%. Also, really well itemised with strength and stamina and 1% crit. Now, the cloth set looks amazing. And when I say looks amazing, I mean the set bonus. So not only is it giving stamina, intellect, spirit, and bonus armour for warlocks, it's giving you increased damage and healing for any caster DPS, but you're going to get some hit and some armour from the 2 set, so that's going to help your tank warlocks and basically everybody who can utilise some hit. But the 3 set has a chance on spellcast to increase your damage and healing by up to 40 for 10 seconds. Now, of course, we don't know if there's a cooldown on that, if it can proc back to back. You know, we don't know. But if this was just purely RNG with no internal cooldown, could be a really interesting set bonus. And then the hunters are going to be really happy with their Mal set, because the 2 set's all good, giving you 24 attack power, but the 3 set gives your attacks a 5% chance of restoring 100 mana. And when I say hunters, obviously shamans as well. Having that 5% chance to get 100 mana back, I mean, they really are addressing some of the sort of key areas, when I say of concern, not really of concern, but the niggly little annoying things like a mana bar on a hunter. Having that chance just to keep your mana going up is pretty cool. Now, this next bit I'm really excited to see more of, because the 3 examples that they've given, I feel like one of them's extremely powerful in terms of it's not quality of life, we're talking in terms of output, and then the other 2 are fairly lackluster. Well, when I say lackluster, you'll get what I mean when I show you. So there's been updates to dungeons, and this is not Gnomeregan, this is 5-man dungeons. They're going to have a chance at dropping books. These books you'll use, and they'll give you quality of life improvements. So the examples that they've given here is Enhanced Blessings, a Paladin, so likely just going to increase the duration of blessings. Revelation of Totemic Projection, so again, this is probably likely just being able to place all your totems down at once. But then Manual of Redirect for Rogues. Now, we know what Redirect does. It comes in later game, not later in Season of Discovery, as in later expansions, and you can move your combo points from one mob to another. Now, what one of those sounds ridiculously powerful compared to the others? Being able to get your buffs up and they last a little bit longer, or actually affecting combat. I think the rogue one's going to be nuts, and you're just going to want it no matter what. No matter what you have to do to get it, you're just going to want to farm the life out of wherever it comes from. I'll be interested to see what other ones we might get, because there's plenty of quality of life issues across the board, and you would imagine that every class is going to have at least one book. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see for your class. Now, probably the biggest one that you're going to be interested in. What runes are you going to get for your class? So we know we're going to be using belt rune and boot runes now, and if you go on Wowhead, they've even updated the talent calculator so you can see that. Obviously, at the moment, each class will only have 1 or 2, because some classes have got 2 runes available to look at for the waist and the feet. But my guess would be closer to launch, we might actually get another slot as well, maybe like cape or something like that, but we'll see. I could be wrong. But what runes are we going to see anyway? So firstly, druids are going to get Eclipse, which is a player favourite ability, apparently. Don't know about that. But what this is going to do is your Starfire increases the critical strike chance of your next 2 Wraths by 30%, And then Wrath will increase the critical strike chance of your next Starfire by 30%. Oath effects stacking up to 4 charges. Oath spells also gain 70% chance at all times to not lose casting time when you take damage. So don't get me wrong, I mean that's a huge buff to Boomies, but this could potentially make him a bit scary in PvP, or should I say scarier. As a long-term druid lover, I'd have personally preferred to actually seen you use this rune and it gives you the Eclipse bar, but that's probably asking a bit much. The second rune they're going to get, which is for Feral, is King of the Jungle. So Tiger's Fury now increases all physical damage you deal by 15% and instantly grants you 60 energy. It's no longer on the global cooldown, but now has its own 30-second cooldown. Now, if you've played Wrath or Cat or anything like that, we already know that that's a thing. Now, what makes this really interesting, and to anyone who really enjoys playing Feral, you'll agree, using Tiger's Fury to buff your next Rip by 15% might actually make Rip worth using. Time will tell. The Paladin runes we know about is Sheath of Light and Guarded by the Light. So Sheath of Light, when dealing damage with your melee weapon, it increases your spell power by an amount equal to 30% of your attack power. This lasts for a minute. In addition, your critical healing spells heal the target for 60% of the healed amount over 12 seconds. That's pretty cool. And Guarded by the Light, each time you hit a target with your melee weapon, you gain 5% of your maximum mana per 3 seconds for 15 seconds. But the amount healed by your Flash of Light, Holy Light and Holy Shock spells is reduced by 50% during this mana regeneration. Kind of like a permanent Divine Plea. I mean, not only powerful for tanks, but depending on what other options you get, could be really good for Ret as well. We saw this Hunter one coming a mile off, didn't we? So Hunters are now going to get Trap Launcher, which allows you to place traps at any location within 40 yards and allows you to place the traps while in combat. Additionally, your fire and frost-based traps have separate shared cooldowns. Now, when it was first data mined, back before even Phase 1 launched, we saw that traps had a 40-yard range on, and we instantly thought that that might have been a thing in Phase 1. I doubted that and said Trap Launcher had come at a later date. I must admit, though, quite surprised it's Phase 2. I would have thought, like, Phase 3, Phase 4 would have been more fitting, but still, Hunters, you'll be happy. Trap Launcher. And then you get Melee Specialist, which is a passive ability which will reduce the cooldown on Raptor Strike, causes it to trigger instantly, and each usage of Raptor Strike has a chance to not trigger its cooldown. Melee Specialist will also remove the cooldown of Mongoose Bite. Definitely goes a long way for melee hunters. Not much else to say, really. Warriors are going to get a massive defensive cooldown now. So Rallying Cry's coming in, which lets loose a Rallying Cry, granting all party and raid members within 40 yards 15% increased maximum health for 10 seconds, and they're going to get Blood Surge, which I absolutely love Blood Surge, where Heroic Strike, Bloodthirst and Whirlwind have a 30% chance to make your next slam within 15 seconds, instant and cost no rage. Rogues are going to be happy now they've got some AoE in the form of Shuriken Toss, which throws the Shuriken at your enemy, dealing damage equal to 25% of your attack power, and also strikes up to 4 additional nearby targets. Not only is it doing AoE, also giving you a combo point. Master of Subtlety is another one, where attacks made while stealthed and for 6 seconds after breaking stealth cause an additional 10% damage. Priests are going to get Mind Spike. For anyone who's played a Shadow Priest in Cataclysm, Mind Spike's actually surprisingly satisfying. So it blasts the target for X amount of Shadow Frost damage and increases the critical strike chance of your next Mind Blast on the target by 30%, stacking up to 3 times. So it's basically like Mind Spike, Mind Spike, Mind Spike, Mind Blast, rinse and repeat. No dots, just raw, flat, direct damage. It's actually pretty cool. It's also very good on targets that have just got really low health. And it's like, well, my dots are going to do nothing, so a quick Mind Spike, boom, it's dead. I like Mind Spike. Also Pain Suppression, which we all know what Pain Suppression is, but instantly reduces all damage taken by a friendly target by 40% and increases resistance to dispel mechanics by 65% for 8 seconds. Bit of a strange one to be putting in Phase 2 unless some of these bosses in Gnome Ragon are going to be hitting ludicrously hard, because as we've seen so far, I mean, we've already got dual-wield tanks. No one's really using proper, tanks as in real sword and board warriors or anything like that. So unless these cooldowns are actually going to be needed outside of PvP, bit of a strange one for me. Warlock's going to get Invocation, so when you refresh some of your damage over time effects while they have less than 6 seconds remaining, it's instantly going to deal damage to the target equal to 1 tick of that spell's periodic damage. So this is a weird way of implementing the new dot mechanics that's going to come with Cataclysm Classic, where actually as long as you refresh between the final tick and the penultimate tick, that extra tick is then going to be moved onto the new dot. So that's basically what they're doing, but in a way where it deals direct damage there and then. That's quite interesting, though. I think if you're going to have something like that, it should really be as a game mechanic rather than a rune. I know they can't do that because it's on the same client as Classic Era, etc., but I feel like that should actually just work for all dot classes. Just my opinion. They're also going to get Dance of the Wicked, where you and your demon pet gain dodge chance equal to your spell critical strike chance each time you deal a critical strike to an enemy, and you also both regain 2% max mana. Yeah, that's cool. Keep the mana up, keep pumping, and get some dodge. Now, one of the mage runes we already knew was coming because it was in the game files in Phase 1, which is Missile Barrage, where it gives your Arcane Blast a 40% chance and your Fireball and Frostbolt spells a 20% chance to reduce the channel duration of your next Arcane Missile spell by 50%. It also reduces the mana cost by 100%, and each missile will fire every half a second. Now, this is huge. Just the fact that you're going to be able to get those arcane missiles free as a healer is going to be epic. Like, I'm really looking forward to this rune. And then Chronostatic Preservation, which is a brand new ability. This has not been seen in any version of the game. This is really interesting. So it fuses arcane fire and frost magic to freeze chronomantic energy into a stored state for later use. You can hold this energy up to 15 seconds before it combusts and expires. When unleashed, it heals a friendly target for 665 to 998. This spell is considered arcane, fire, and frost for interactions with other spells, talents, and effects. Now, this is going to be a great way of getting that instant, quick heal on someone without having to channel and then start spamming Arcane Blast to top them off. And what I find interesting about both of these runes is they've got Fireball and Frostbolt actually on them, and Fire and Frost magic. Now, I know this is probably so it just makes it usable by more than just an Arcane Mage, but be interested to play about with it. Overall, two great additions to the Mage. Shamans are going to get Maelstrom Weapon, which is going to be great and really makes dual-wield Shamans start to come to life, in my opinion. I love Maelstrom Weapon. So this is just where each of your auto attacks when you deal damage have got a chance to reduce your next Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Lesser Healing Wave, Chain Heal, or Lava Burst by 20%. And this stacks 5 times, so when you hit 5 stacks, it's going to be instant cast. Spirit of the Alpha is another interesting one, where it's almost the opposite of Blessing of Salvation, and casts a 30-minute buff on a friendly target to increase the threat generated by that target. So it infuses a target with Spirit of an Alpha Wolf, increasing all threat generated by the target by 45%. Now, this is going to be great. I mean, 45% is pretty significant. And then finally, for you two-handed Shamans, you've got some love. Each time you strike an enemy with a two-handed weapon, you gain 30% attack speed with two-handed weapons for 10 seconds. It's a little bit boring, could have been made a little bit more interesting, but still. Now, that's all the runes that we know about at the moment, but what they did say at the beginning of the video that was attached to this big post was all of this is going to be put on the PTR soon. Now, not PTR as in we're going to be able to go and test it, it's more for them, because it's going to be the PTR for all of Classic Era, Classic Hardcore, and Season of Discovery. So none of the seasonal stuff is actually going to be in the game, but it is in the files. So expect a lot more stuff to be data mined over the next couple of weeks. Well, not couple of weeks, over the next couple of days. So now we'll move on to the PvP event in Strangleform Val. So the PvP event is going to be Beware the Blood Moon. So with Phase 2 of Season of Discovery, they're introducing a PvP event called the Blood Moon. Now, this event starts every 3 hours, it lasts 30 minutes, and the entire zone turns red. So it's fairly obvious that it's on at the moment. Now, they're offsetting this with Ashen Val. Again, something that I didn't see in the post itself, but it was in the video. So the STV event is always going to start about an hour after the Ashen Val event, so you don't need to choose between the two, because they are making the Ashen Val PvP event start every 3 hours, so on a fixed 3-hour timer as well, exactly the same as the STV event. So during this event, killing players will allow you to earn currency, which can be traded for various rewards. While you can still group up with your allies for the event, the Blood Moon is a harsh mistress and will punish those in raid groups. I would guess it will be something like the more people in the raid group, maybe there's a bit of a ticking dot that goes on you. You take a little bit of damage every 10 seconds, 20 seconds, something like that. Would just be my guess. So you can group up, but you're going to need healers. It could be something completely different. You may deal reduced damage or something like that, but I think taking damage seems like the obvious one. Now, you can opt out of the event by talking to the Zandalari Emissary. You won't be able to earn any of the rewards from the event if you opt out, and general realm PvP rules will still apply. Now, you might have read that and been like, well, what's the point? There's no point opting out then, is there? If you're still running around the zone questing and you're not earning currency, but you can still be killed and you can still kill the other players, then what's the point? So the only thing that this is actually going to change by opting out, from what I can see, is the fact that you'll no longer be able to be attacked by allies. So this is meant to be a bit of a free-for-all PvP event where, yeah, you can group up, sure, but that's not actually encouraged. So you'll be able to kill people from your guild while this is on and you're in STV, or just generally anyone in your faction. So I'm guessing all it's going to really do for a PvP server is it's going to disable the fact that you can attack your own faction and be attacked by your own faction. So on a PvE server, if you opt out, you're now not going to be able to attack or be attacked by anyone. But on a PvP server, even if you opt out, you're still going to be able to be attacked by the opposite faction. So unlike in the Ashenvale PvP event, there will not be any PvP objectives in Stranglethorn Val, and you'll also need to keep a sharp eye out for the Chosen of Bloodlower, who is more than a force to be reckoned with and will kill all in their path. We'll have to wait and see what those do, but there's no world buff that comes from the STV PvP event, which we'll get to a little bit later in the video. But just in case you thought, this sounds rubbish, I don't want to do this, am I going to feel forced to do it every week just so I can get my world buff? You won't. Now, me personally, I actually think it sounds really cool. Just going in and just skirmishing and trying to kill everyone. Sounds pretty fun. Now, there are going to be PvP rewards, so if you're looking to spend your currency on new rewards, you'll want to seek out the merchant just outside the Gurubashi Arena. Great, what a place for it to be. And you'll be able to get class-specific item rewards. Now, the ring for mages looks amazing, increasing fire damage by up to 16, giving 9 stamina and 6 intellect. And there's also a nice one-handed mace with strength and agility on for warriors. Obviously, there's going to be far more than that, but that's what we know about at the moment. There's also these 2 new mounts, which is the Tiger and the Raptor. These can be acquired by participating in the event, and these are level 40 mounts with unique appearances. If you wondered what reputation you're going to get from the quests that are tied to the STV PvP event, probably guessed it, but yes, it's going to be Arathi Basin. And the Arathi Basin faction does actually have some pretty decent rewards that you're probably going to want to get. Now, alongside this, they're also making some PvP updates. So these adjustments are coming to the matchmaking. And what they've said is, while we understand that it can be frustrating for solo players to match against pre-made groups, we want to be careful about impacting queues. So to address this, we're implementing 2 changes. Players in groups of 5 or fewer, you will have a higher chance to match against groups of 5 or fewer. Likewise, if you're a group of 6 or more, you'll have a higher chance to match with groups with 6 or more. This will help aid in matching more pre-made groups with pre-made groups, or non-pre-mades with non-pre-mades where possible. To account for the potential to create longer queues with this updated matchmaking system, the system will ignore these rules after a period of time, should we start seeing queues impacted. This will then match you with the first available, so you can get in and play without waiting too much longer. Absolutely the right thing to do, and we spoke about it in a video recently, but that is what they done in TBC when they done same faction PvP. It would always try and put you against the opposite faction first, but if that started taking too long, then it would just match you against whatever it could. So yeah, really solid change. I think that's going to be a really positive change, actually. So I mentioned world buffs. Now, the Ashenvale weekly quest world buff cannot be gained after level 39 anymore. The same goes for the Black Fathom Deeps world buff. This can't be gained after 39, and the STV PvP event will not have a world buff, as I've already mentioned, but Gnome Ragon will. The reason they've done it this way is what they said is they didn't want you to feel like you've got to run around and grab tons and tons of world buffs, especially when we're at level 60 if all of these continue to stack. They want to make each phase's world buffs feel special and fun to get. Now, the good thing is that they will work up until 39, so the existing Black Fathom Deeps and Ashenvale buffs, because you're going to actually be able to use them while leveling, and they've made some changes to leveling, which is going to be quite interesting to see. So from level 1 to 25, you're now going to have a new Discover's Delight buff, which gives 50% extra XP. Not only that, the Black Fathom Deeps raid will give a sizable amount of XP upon completion. They really did want to stress the fact that it's a good amount of XP and worth doing. And they also said that it will be worth doing until sort of mid-30s. So every 3 days, even while you're leveling, you're still going to want to go and do Black Fathom Deeps, because it may end up giving you about a level's worth of experience. That would be my guess. On the basis it's got a 3-day lockout, getting nearly a level or just over a level from doing it, I think would be pretty reasonable. They're also making several changes to the Waylaid supplies, and these are going to give greatly increased XP. Now, they did say specifically it was the 25 to 40 version of the Waylaid supplies, so I don't think there's going to be many changes to the lower level ones, but they have said that any of these little frustrations you've had about the Waylaid supplies, which our obvious frustration is only being able to carry one incomplete supply at a time, those are going to be eliminated. They didn't specifically say you're now going to be able to carry more of them, but that's exactly what they're going to end up doing, because they have said your frustrations with the Waylaid supplies are being addressed, and they got more to tell us before Phase 2 launches. So that's really good news. So you're actually going to have numerous ways to level. You're going to be able to go and do the BFD raid every few days. Farming waylaid supplies could end up being an extremely legitimate and fast way of leveling if you can find somewhere you can get them frequently enough and you're stocked up on whatever you need. And then obviously 1 to 25 is going to be made quicker because you're going to get a 50% XP buff. Now let's move on to the profession updates. Now I love what they've done with professions in Season of Discovery. They've actually made them feel meaningful. And depending on what profession you are, when I show you some of these items, you might want to change your profession before Phase 2. So after the positive reception to professions in Season of Discovery Phase 1, we are building and expanding on it significantly for Phase 2. So we're apparently going to be able to discover approximately 20 new recipes across all non-gathering professions, and we even get a little sneak peek at what some of these are going to be. There's also going to be that really cool quest line, like what we done to be able to get our extra planar boots or our toughened leather gloves, that quest line that we had to do to be able to obtain those recipes. There's going to be a cool one for Gnomragon as well. It didn't specifically say Gnomragon, but it's fairly obvious that's where it's going to start, or at least end, or have something to do with it. I don't know. And they've done something pretty special with the materials. So what they've said is recipes will also include some new materials that players will be able to find throughout the game and trade with others to get the items they need most to craft their wares. And in the video that went alongside this post, they actually said that they think it's going to create quite an interesting environment where you're going to have to trade with other people that have got different professions to you. It's going to create a cool economy that are around these crafted items as well. So how that pans out, we'll see. So we can see that they've gone down their head route for Phase 2. And these are really cool, really well itemised, and I think pretty much everybody's going to want to use it. So we've got the Mal head, which has got bonus armour, so it's useful for tanks. It's got strength, agility, stamina, and intellect, so it's useful for, when I said tanks, obviously I meant Shaman tank, but it's also useful for Shaman, DPS, and Hunters. It gives you 1% chance to hit, as well as a usability, where you engage the radiation mitigation protocols by this helmet, causing you to immediately remove all active poison effects and gain immunity to all nature damage for 3 seconds. I'm sure in certain fights in Gnomragon that's going to be super useful. The cloth head I absolutely love, and I really, really like the usability on it. It gives you stamina and intellect as you would expect, and it also gives you damage and healing done by magical spells increased by up to 22. It's also got a nice 4 MP5 on, but the big one is the use effect. Harness the latent arcane energy in the nearby air to give you charged inspiration, reducing the mana cost of all spells by 50% and increasing the damage and healing done by them by up to 50 for 12 seconds. Now that is amazing for everyone. It's useful as a damage cooldown, it's useful for healers. I mean, as an arcane mage, double dipping with that, reducing the cost of your spells and increasing the damage they're going to do. I mean, that is mental. I really hope that don't change. One of the plate heads, obviously we can expect to see 2 of these because you'd expect to see a strength version as well. But the intellect version gives stamina and intellect and increases damage and healing done by magical spells and effects by 21. And you gain reinforced willpower, preventing silence, interrupt effects and spell pushbacks for 10 seconds. Definitely really useful in PvP. What I really like though is the alchemy and enchanting recipes that have been added. Because up until this point, enchanting and alchemy, sure, it's great. You can make gold, you can enchant people's gear, you can enchant your own gear, but ultimately you're not getting any bonus to your stats more than anybody else, because let's say you put 3 weapon damage on your staff, you could put 3 weapon damage on someone else's staff. You're not actually getting anything for being enchanting. And the same goes for alchemy. Obviously you can make loads of useful elixirs that people will buy, but they can use them as well as you can use them. So for alchemy, they're adding a mildly irradiated rejuvenation potion. So it gives you health and mana when you use it, but it also increases your attack power by 40 and damage done by spells by 35 for 15 seconds. Now that's pretty cool because obviously you'll be able to just use it on cooldown. And for enchanting, you're essentially getting an extra world buff because it lasts 30 minutes on a 30-minute cooldown, so if at some point you die in that 30 minutes, there will be a period of time where you won't have it on, but you can keep it on all the time. It only costs 3 dream dust to make, and you gain an enchanted sigil of innovation, empowering you to deal up to 20 increased damage and healing with spells, and increases attack power by 20 for 30 minutes. It can only be applied outside of combat, but I mean, that's really cool. It's like a permanent buff that you can get from being enchanting. Obviously just don't die too much. Now there's been a lot of questions about professions, if they're going to be capped at 200 or 210 or just changed in some way, and they haven't been. So professions will be capped, but at 225 in Phase 2. The only thing is, profession specializations will not be available until Phase 3. So you won't be able to become a Goblin Engineer or a Gnomish Engineer or a Weaponsmith or an Armorsmith or whatever, but they are planning something very special for those at level 50 and 60. So we know at level 50, so Phase 3, is when we're actually going to be able to get the specializations. They've also said at 60 as well. So at 60, I'm guessing there'll probably be extra specialization items that we can craft. They also hinted at new explosives for engineering. Well, I mean, it's bound to be for engineering, but it'd be interesting to see what those are. Now, one that's either going to make you really happy or really sad. GDKPs will be banned with Phase 2. Now, this is something I've been wanting to see for a long time. As soon as they added the WoW token, I started doing GDKPs purely so I didn't have to pay for game time, because why not? But even Blizzard themselves recognise the fact that it leads to illicit behaviour and RMT and all the other bad things that they're constantly saying they're trying to prevent and eliminate, but then also doing nothing about GDKPs. So this is not going to be for Classic or Retail or anything like that. It purely is Season of Discovery. But I reckon if it works well in Season of Discovery and they see positive results from it, maybe expect to see it in Classic Cataclysm as well. But what they've said is GDKPs will no longer be permitted in Season of Discovery when Phase 2 launches. They appreciate the fact that it's had some convenience and social benefits, however they feel that it's antithetical to the nature of the season, and they want to give a version of Classic without GDKPs a try. And this is the best place to try that. Why not? If it goes horribly wrong and people really hate the fact that there's no GDKPs, who knows? They could revert it, and in Phase 3 we might have them back. But I personally think the pug scene and everything will just be so much better without GDKPs, because I don't know about your server, but there's far more GDKPs on my server than there are normal runs, and it does put a lot of people off that just haven't got a lot of gold or refuse to buy gold or whatever, you know. So I think the pug scene's going to look very interesting in Phase 2, and I look forward to seeing how this plays out. Also, when it comes to botting, they've said that they've got some really interesting new tech coming in Phase 2. So it's currently in limited testing on live, and they said that in live it's having really, really good results. So what that looks like, we don't know, but they are going to tell us more soon. But they want us to continue reporting these things that we see, because what they actually said in the video was, as they're clamping down in one place and banning all the bots that are doing a specific farm, then another one pops up. So they're pretty much just playing whack-a-mole at the moment. But hopefully with this new tech that they've been testing, it might reduce the amount of bots that we've got massively, which will be great. They're never going to be able to get rid of them, because bots will just get more sophisticated, but doing something is better than doing nothing. I did say there was a lot of information, but that brings us to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe. Consider joining the channel as a member. If you need the Rested XP guide to get you to level 40 in Phase 2, link in the pinned comment in the description, and I'll see you on the next one.